Philippine independence declared. The Spanish-American War was a brief war that took place in 1898. At the time, the Philippines was a Spanish possession. During the war, Filipino rebels, led by Emilio Aguinaldo, proclaimed the independence of the Philippines after 300 years of Spanish rule. By mid-August of 1898, Filipino rebels and U.S. troops had ousted the Spanish from the Philippines. However, Aguinaldo's hopes for independence were dashed when the United States formally annexed the Philippines as part of its peace treaty with Spain. The Philippines is a large island chain, or archipelago, situated off of Southeast Asia. It was colonized by the Spanish in the second half of the 16th century. By the late 19th century, Filipino intellectuals and the middle class had begun calling for independence. In 1892, a secret revolutionary society known as Kipanunan was formed in Manila, the Philippine capital on the island of Luzon. Membership grew dramatically, and in August 1896, the Spanish uncovered Kapanunan's plan for a rebellion. This discovery forced immediate action by the rebels, who were not yet fully prepared. Revolts broke out across Luzon, and in March 1897, 28-year-old Emilio Aguinaldo became leader of the rebellion. By late 1897, the revolutionaries had been driven into the hills southeast of Manila. Aguinaldo negotiated an agreement with the Spanish, who promised to institute reforms in the Philippines if Aguinaldo and his generals would agree to leave the country. The rebel leaders soon departed for Hong Kong. With that, the Philippine Revolution temporarily came to an end. Aguinaldo helps U.S. in war against Spain. In April 1898, the Spanish-American War broke out over Spain's bloody suppression of a rebellion in Cuba. Aguinaldo then made arrangements with U.S. authorities to return to the Philippines and assist the United States in the war against Spain. He landed on May 19th, rallied his revolutionaries, and began liberating towns south of Manila. On June 12th, he proclaimed Philippine independence. His rebels, meanwhile, had encircled the Spanish in Manila. With the support of Dewey's squadron in Manila Bay, they would surely have conquered the Spanish. Dewey, however, was waiting for U.S. ground troops, who began landing in July and took over the Filipino positions surrounding Manila. On August 8th, the Spanish commander informed the United States that he would surrender the city under two conditions. First, the United States was to make the advance into the capital look like a battle. Second, under no conditions were the Filipino rebels to be allowed into the city. On August 13th, the mock Battle of Manila was staged, and the Americans kept their promise to keep the rebels out of the city after the city passed into their hands. The Americans took over Manila and began planning peace negotiations with Spain. Meanwhile, Aguinaldo and other rebel leaders held a revolutionary assembly, the Malolos, in September. They drew up a democratic constitution, the first ever in Asia. In January 1899, a government was formed with Aguinaldo as president. Philippines becomes a U.S. territory. On February 4th, what became known as the Philippine Insurrection began when Filipino rebels and U.S. troops skirmished inside American lines in Manila. 2 days later, the U.S. Senate voted to approve the Treaty of Paris with Spain. The Philippines were now a U.S. territory, acquired in exchange for $20 million paid to the Spanish. In response, Aguinaldo formally launched a new revolt, this time against the United States. The militarily outmatched rebels soon turned to guerrilla warfare, and the U.S. Congress authorized the deployment of 60,000 troops to subdue them. By the end of 1899, there were 65,000 U.S. troops in the Philippines, but the war dragged on. On March 23, 1901, U.S. General Frederick Funston and a group of officers mounted a daring operation. Pretending to be prisoners, they crossed into rebel territory and surprised Aguinaldo in his stronghold in the Luzon village of Palanan, and then captured the rebel leader. Aguinaldo took an oath of allegiance to the United States and called for an end to the rebellion, but many of his followers fought on. During the next year, U.S. forces slowly pacified the Philippines. In one terrible incident, U.S. forces on the island of Samar responded to the killing of a group of U.S. soldiers by murdering all males on the island above the age of 10. Many women and young children were also butchered. General Jacob Smith, who directed the killings, was court-martialed and forced to retire. Philippines gains full independence. In 1902, an American civil government took over administration of the Philippines, and the 3-year Philippine uprising was declared to be at an end. Scattered resistance persisted for several years, however. More than 4,000 Americans perished suppressing the Philippines, more than 10 times the number killed in the Spanish-American War. More than 20,000 Filipino rebel fighters were killed, and an unknown number of civilians perished. In 1935, the Commonwealth of the Philippines was established with U.S. approval, and Manuel Quezon was elected the country's first president. On July 4th, 1946, full independence was granted to the Republic of the Philippines by the United States.